I could no longer hear anything but the faint static coming from the laptop speaker. Your performance has consistently fallen below expectations for the past 3 months. We can't allow this to continue. Brett Harding's voice, executive vice president, came through the Zoom screen cold as steel. He leaned back in a leather chair, twirling a metal pen like this was just another dull midweek meeting. I clenched my left hand slightly, forcing myself not to react. The red marks on my wrist from last Friday's chemo session were still visible. Alongside Brett's square on the screen were 3 blurry HR representatives: Alyssa, Tom, and a woman I didn't recognize. None of them met my eyes. "Brett," I said, steadying my voice despite the sting in my chest. "I just renewed the contract with the North Crest hotel chain 3 days ago. We increased this quarter's marketing budget by nearly 20%. Relationship management is one part," Brett replied, unblinking. "But we need numbers, results, conversion. Cost per lead has doubled under your oversight." It felt like a punch to the chest, not because of the words, but because of how utterly indifferent he sounded saying them. I was director of market development at Midas Point Hospitality, a firm providing high-end marketing services to independent hotels across the western U.S. I had worked there for 13 years, since I was a fresh UCLA graduate, starting out as a junior marketing associate. 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. The treatment plan was aggressive, but I hadn't missed a single workday. I had grown used to planning my life around pain. "The decision is effective immediately," Alyssa added, voice flat like she was reading an invoice. "Your final paycheck and 2-week severance will be deposited this Friday. Your email, company laptop, and phone will be deactivated at the end of this call. Please return all devices within 5 business days." I said nothing. The pale yellow light above my home office made the room feel even smaller. That morning, I had taken off my headscarf. My hair had just started growing back, patchy like new grass after rain. "Thank you," I blurted out, automatic and empty, like muscle memory after a public execution on screen. "We wish you all the best," Brett added, then ended the call without waiting for a reply. Just me and a black screen. I sat frozen, thoughts crashing into each other. Health insurance, treatment costs, my wife Hannah working 2 jobs to keep us afloat, Logan, 10, and Ava, 8. Still unaware of what I was fighting. I had always believed as long as I could keep working, I could hold this family together. But being capable meant nothing when someone decided you were no longer a profitable metric. A new email notification popped up confirming strategy session next week. Client, North Crest Group, sent by Stephen Wade, the managing director of my largest account. He had no idea I'd just been let go. I stared at the subject line, throat tightening. When the phone rang, I didn't need to check the caller ID. "Sam," came Jeremy's voice. "My best friend, tense like a snapped string. They just announced your termination in the company-wide meeting. Said you were let go for lack of accountability, called you dead weight." I couldn't speak. This wasn't just a job loss, it was a purge, a smear campaign. I had thought I was indispensable to Midas Point. Not out of ego, but because I'd helped build it. Day by day, campaign by campaign, rooftop meeting after rooftop meeting across Denver, Austin, and Palm Springs. When I joined, the marketing team had just 3 people, no dedicated office, working out of a shared space with sales. Back then, Midas Point only managed 2 mid-range hotels on the West Coast. I remembered clearly because the first contract I secured, a small chain called Sunfield Inn, remained a loyal client for over 10 years, up until just last week. The Stay Bright with Sunfield campaign in 2014 was our first breakthrough. We turned a rundown motel chain into a favorite family stop for travelers headed to the Grand Canyon. Occupancy jumped to 76% in just 2 quarters. Brett, then a regional sales manager, had congratulated me at the company holiday party, wine glass in hand. "You saved that quarter for us, Sam." No mentions that now. I grew the team from 3 to 16. We didn't just run ads, we built brands from scratch. From logo design, identity systems, media partnerships, and travel agency coordination, to even selecting room fragrances for a consistent sensory experience at Magnolia Spa retreats. We maintained a client retention rate near 93% for 3 straight years, a near impossibility in this industry. I never let a customer email go unanswered for more than 4 hours. A 6 a.m. call from another time zone? I picked it up. Even during chemo sessions, thanks to hospital Wi-Fi, I reviewed budget reports for the Aspen holiday campaign while nurses changed my IV line. It may sound insane, but I never saw myself as a victim. I simply thought, if I'm alive, I can still contribute. Until this morning, when everything was cut clean like a cold blade, I realized no system truly honors loyalty. The smell of burnt pancakes from Logan's breakfast still lingered in our kitchen. Hannah had left early for work, and Ava was upstairs scraping violin strings. The jagged notes hit harder than Brett's hollow words yesterday. Customer emails kept coming. One from an executive at Del Mar Resorts, where we just wrapped the Winter Made Personal campaign, read, "I'm shocked to hear you left. Your team helped us break a low-season booking record. Hoping this is just a misunderstanding? If only it were." I opened my personal laptop and scrolled through the hundreds of files I'd saved out of habit. Presentations, customer surveys, growth charts, handwritten feedback from hotels. I never thought I'd need them for self-defense. All of it still existed, but only I knew what it was truly worth. To Brett, all that mattered was an Excel sheet with 2 columns: cost and profit. I opened Jeremy's message again. The latest line read, "Rumor is they're replacing the entire marketing team with outsourced folks from Chicago. Cheaper. Brett's pushing hard to raise profits before merger talks wrap." Merger? I'd heard whispers during a strategic meeting last month, but I didn't think it was that close. I took a sip of cold coffee, eyes still locked on the screen. Turns out, what I didn't factor in was getting replaced not for failing, but for doing things right in a system that had stopped caring about long-term value. The doorbell rang. Ava ran downstairs to open it, then shouted, "Dad, Uncle Kyle's here." Kyle, the former chief financial officer of Midas Point, had resigned earlier this month after a heated dispute with Brett over cutting employee benefits. He stepped inside, his face visibly tense with frustration. "Sam," he said bluntly, "I just heard what happened. But there's something you need to see." In his hand was a thick yellow envelope. On the front, "Confidential, internal audit, draft." A chill ran down my spine. I looked at him, suspicious. "Where did you get this?" Kyle sat down, eyes steady. "Brett didn't just fire you. He's been crafting an entire narrative to justify it, and if what's in here is accurate, he's been planning it for a while." This was no longer just a job loss, something much bigger was at play. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Kyle opened the folder, flipped through several pages, and stopped at one with a bold red heading. "Below standard performance. Recommended marketing department restructure." Right beneath it was my name, Samuel Reeves, with a note beside it. "Inconsistent performance, prolonged impact from personal issues. Recommend replacement with younger, more adaptable personnel." I leaned back, gripping the arm of my chair. It didn't take many lines to understand what this was. "Brett submitted this report to the executive board 2 months ago," Kyle said, eyes fixed on the paper. "While you were juggling hospital visits and budget projections, he was already building a case to push you out. It even includes a pre-merger personnel transition strategy." I recalled the sudden meeting reschedules without notice, the strategy emails I stopped receiving, the sidelong glances from coworkers in the hallway. I'd told myself it was nothing, just a busy season, system shifts. I was wrong. They were constructing a new structure, one with no room for someone weakened by illness, and too attached to the old framework. Ever since treatment began, my schedule had shifted. Chemo on Fridays, recovery over the weekend, back to work Monday morning with a body that felt like concrete. But I never missed a deadline. I even pitched the golden stay strategy to a client from the hospital wearing a dress shirt over a patient gown. I thought I was holding it all together. Kyle continued. "Brett also contacted an outsourcing firm in Dallas. He sent them the entire client database your team built. No internal clearance, no security protocol." "Are you sure?" I asked sharply. "There's documentation attached." Kyle pointed to the next page. "No one outside senior leadership has access to that data, but he signed under Mason's name." head of IT, and rebranded it as an external performance evaluation. This wasn't just about removing me. He was tearing down everything we'd built to replace it with a cost-cutting machine designed to inflate short-term metrics for investors. I stood up from my chair. I need a copy of everything in this folder. I already sent it to your personal email, Kyle replied quickly. But Sam, listen, you have to be careful. He's aligned with the new investment group leading the Midas Point sale. If you speak up, they'll try to frame you as bitter over being fired. I stood silently in my small living room, staring out at Logan riding his bike under the soft evening light. I had no other option. Stay quiet or protect what my team and I had poured everything into. That night, I didn't sleep. I reviewed every file from the last 4 years: campaign data, budget sheets, KPI confirmations, client appreciation emails, photos of late-night brainstorming sessions. Among them was a Zoom recording from March. Brett saying, "Even though Sam's undergoing treatment, he's still the backbone of marketing. We need him during this phase." 1 month later, he began excluding me from meetings. I replayed that file, saved it into a separate folder, labeled "To Whom It May Concern, Full Record." The next morning, I called Jessica, Northcrest's marketing manager. She'd once told me that if I ever left Midas Point, I should call her first. The call lasted over 30 minutes. "Midas Point didn't tell us you'd left," she said. "We assumed you were on a business trip. They sent someone completely new who doesn't understand our regional market at all." She didn't hide her frustration. "If they're playing games like this, we may have to reconsider the entire partnership." I thanked her and ended the call, my chest heavy. I never wanted to drag others into this, but Brett left no safe exit. That afternoon, I received an email from Midas Point's legal department. "Please verify all personal activities conducted during working hours, specifically medical appointments during business time." One sentence. That was all it took to freeze my blood. He wasn't just cutting me out, he was turning me into someone who exploited the company for treatment. I reopened the evidence folder, hands steady, eyes locked. There was no more hiding, no waiting for someone else to act, no allowing my name to be buried under a forged report. At that moment, I understood. This fight wasn't just about keeping a job. A copy of the legal notice hit my inbox at 7:13 a.m., its subject in bold: "Notice of payroll recovery due to violation of work hours." I opened the attached file, skimming each line like reading an indictment against myself. Midas Point's internal legal department accused me of misusing work hours for prolonged personal purposes from January through June, specifically attending unauthorized medical appointments during business hours. Rage didn't explode. It simmered, low and searing like fire in the lungs. I remembered every appointment, scheduled on Friday afternoons after work had wrapped. Late-day meetings were held online, recorded, with minutes taken. I never missed a call. Never went more than 3 hours without replying to an email. Every action logged in our internal systems. Now, all of it was lumped together as sustained misconduct. They were demanding I repay $18,600, an amount they claimed covered hours spent in treatment plus fees. The letter warned that failure to respond within 10 days would trigger independent legal proceedings. This wasn't an impulsive move. It wasn't a reaction. It was calculated, a recycled script, with a new name inserted in place of the last target. Kyle called as I reached the last paragraph. He had just spoken with a former colleague from Covington Group, where Brett had worked as COO before joining Midas Point. "Sam, this is a carbon copy of what happened at Covington 3 years ago," he said. "There was a manager named Ellen Moore, accused of misusing authority while being treated for heart disease. She received a similar payroll recovery letter for lack of transparency during work hours. 12 days later, she lost her stock option agreement." I closed my eyes. I didn't need more detail. Like me, Ellen had been about to receive her employee stock payout after 10 years of service. Like me, her dismissal fell just before the vesting date. I pulled up my old financial records in the system. My ESOP package, valued at nearly $90,000, was set to vest fully on July 15th. I was terminated on July 8th. That timing wasn't coincidence. Do you have anything from the Covington case? I asked. There's someone willing to talk, Kyle replied, but we'll have to tread carefully. They were pressured into signing a non-disclosure agreement. I nodded unconsciously. Memories came rushing back. Those leadership meetings where Brett always dodged questions about long-term data. He only cared about quarterly and monthly cost efficiency. The financial reports he pushed were polished, surface level, designed like props for investors. And now with the merger between Midas Point and an East Coast hotel group entering its final audit stage, every number had to be streamlined. Long-standing stakeholders were quietly targeted for removal. Subtly, but decisively. I sat frozen in front of my laptop for more than 2 hours, trying to organize everything in my head. My termination wasn't a simple decision. It was part of a deliberate pattern. Eliminating senior employees just before their benefits vested, protecting a glossy financial image by sacrificing people. When Hannah came home, she sat beside me, glancing at the documents scattered across the table. "Is it really that bad?" she asked quietly. "It's not just about me," I replied softly. "There are others, gagged or waiting for their turn." That night, I compiled a full report attaching every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Internal emails, work logs, client thank you letters, and even the legal notice demanding repayment. Its timeline matching the exact date my stock benefits were scheduled to vest. At the end of the document, I added one sentence. "If justice won't happen from within, I'll bring the truth to light from the outside." When I sent the draft to a labor rights attorney Kyle had recommended, I felt a quiet shift inside me. Not confidence in victory, but the relief of no longer surrendering. The game had revealed its players. It was time the scriptwriters faced reality. 3 days after sending the file, my phone began vibrating non-stop early in the morning. The first call came from Chase Hamilton, Vice President of Marketing at Highland Grove Resorts, a client I'd worked with directly for 8 years. "Sam, what's going on at Midas Point?" Chase's voice was tight. "They sent someone new. No notice, no handoff. This guy doesn't even know the summer campaign schedule and sent us a demo that completely butchered our brand identity." I clenched my phone, a cold wave creeping down my spine. Highland Grove accounted for nearly 12% of last quarter's revenue, a critical link in our southern client portfolio. "I'm no longer with Midas Point," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Didn't they tell you?" "No. We only found out when we asked directly, and the guy mumbled something about Sam taking emergency leave for personal reasons. No handover files, no roadmap. We feel blindsided." I heard his pen tapping on the table. Chase wasn't one to speak much, but when he did, things were already off track. "We'll terminate the contract if they keep withholding information," he said. "We're also considering new partners." Before I could even put the phone down, another email came through, this time from Amanda Klein, creative director at Thompson Life, media partner for 3 hotel projects I oversaw in Colorado. "Sam, no one from your team is answering emails. They sent us a promo titled Standard Experience Package, the same for all 3 properties, no targeting, no local imagery. Was that a mistake? Midas Point said you're gone, but didn't say why." I typed out a brief reply offering sincere professional advice, even though I was no longer obligated. Inside, the crack widened. By noon, I'd received calls, messages, and emails from 9 different clients, all with the same issue. No notification of my departure, no transition plan, and all noticing something off about the new direction. The issue wasn't change. Every organization must evolve. The problem was how Brett discarded loyal people without acknowledgement, replacing them with mass-produced templates that ignored what made each brand distinct. That afternoon, I got a text from Sophia, my former coordinator now working in the Houston office. "Sam, I can't talk long. They just held an internal meeting. Everyone's being moved to a fully automated campaign system. No more custom strategies. All content comes from templates." Some folks complained, but Brett said, "If you don't like it, you're free to leave." I stared blankly at my computer screen. That system? I'd tested it last year and scrapped it for being too rigid. Now it was back, soulless, and forced into use to boost short-term profit margins. Late that evening, my phone rang. It was Thomas Beck, CEO of Landmark Boutique Hotels. a heritage chain in Savannah and Charleston that brought in over 15% of Midas Point's annual revenue. Sam, do you have 5 minutes? Of course, I replied, surprised. I just received the fall marketing proposal from the new team. They lumped my 2 historic hotels in with a beachside resort in a generic campaign. One is built on heritage, the other on modern amenities. How can one campaign work for both? I sighed. There's nothing I can do anymore, Thomas. I'm not calling to blame you, he cut in. I want to ask, if you started your own team, could you bring back the value we had before? I paused, heart pounding. We need someone who understands clients, not algorithms, but people. The call ended, but the impact echoed in my mind until long past midnight. I hadn't expected the dominoes to fall this fast, nor had I imagined an entire department's work could be erased in just weeks to make a PowerPoint slide look more appealing to investors. But what Brett didn't count on was this. Clients don't stay loyal to spreadsheets. They stay loyal to people. And those people, they've started speaking up. I sat quietly in my small home office, desk lamp glowing over a wall of color-coded sticky notes and printed records, mapped out like a timeline from last October when Brett Harding took over to the day he fired me through a cold Zoom call. On screen, I opened the folder labeled project_archive_confidential. Nearly 20 gigabytes of data sat there. Campaign reports, quarterly performance charts, client praise emails, team photos from milestone celebrations. Every file was proof of the marketing team's real value, now being erased by Brett's wave of simplified reporting. I opened an old email from Ethan Grant, CEO of Palm Echo Hotels. Sam's strategy helped us pass 80% occupancy during low season. No one's ever done that. Recommending increased budget for next quarter. Below it, Brett's response. Too expensive? We need to shift toward cost reduction formulas. Cost reduction? That's what he called every individual effort, every sleepless night, every carefully weighed decision, rooted in regional insight and customer behavior. I began drafting a new document. I titled it simply, The Full Context, Samuel Reeves. No complaints, no emotional framing. Just a timeline of facts, verified, referenced, supported. I divided the first section into 3 main parts. Marketing department performance from Q1 to Q2, including growth charts, client retention rates, and budget data. Personal contributions listing campaigns I directly led, screenshots of client feedback and internal audit notes. Treatment timeline and work schedule, detailing each chemotherapy session and the online meetings I continued to lead throughout treatment. Next came the more sensitive section, executive misconduct. I didn't write it as an accusation, I simply presented facts. The timing of the wage recovery letter matched exactly with the date my stock was due to vest. An internal email Kyle shared showed that Brett once instructed changes to employee records to reduce legal exposure prior to merger. Another leaked memo specifically ordered revoking access to high-level projects from legacy employees on the downsizing priority list. I wrote until 3 a.m. without resting. The final document was over 40 pages long, not counting appendices. Even with my head pounding, I reviewed each section carefully, refining the language, not to sound vengeful, but to remain clear, logical, and undeniable. Where would I send it? Not the press. I didn't want this turned into a media spectacle. I wasn't aiming for a lawsuit, at least not yet. The priority was stopping Brett from further damaging our client partnerships and warning investors who were being blinded by shiny numbers. Midas Point had 3 major investors, each holding roughly a third of the company. In past board meetings, I had interacted with all their representatives, especially Ms. Lillian Strauss from Beacon Equity, a woman in her 60s, sharp and deeply data-driven. At a meeting last year, she'd told me, "We don't care about flashy slides. Show me raw numbers and source logic." I dug through old emails, found her assistant's contact, and also located the contacts for the other 2 firms, Crescent Management and Redwood Holdings. Composed a short, direct email. To whom it may concern. My name is Samuel Reeves, former Director of Market Development at Midas Point Hospitality. Attached is a data-based report with clearly sourced comparisons covering the marketing department's performance, campaigns currently being dismantled, and signs of internal manipulation intended to optimize metrics for the upcoming merger. This document is not intended to serve personal grievances, but to offer factual clarity so you may make decisions aligned with the long-term interest of the business. Sincerely, Samuel Reeves. I attached the file and clicked Schedule Send for exactly 8 a.m. the next morning. No one could predict where those lines would lead, but when decisions are made based on distorted data, the truth can't stay silent. Sending that record wasn't revenge. It was the only path left to protect what dozens of people had spent their careers building. Real credibility. Something no polished spreadsheet could replace. The next morning, when my phone rang at 7:15, I almost didn't pick up. I'd stayed up until nearly 3 a.m. just to revise one line in the document's introduction. But the name on the screen made me sit up straight. Douglas Rimmer, CEO of Greenline Collection, a boutique, eco-friendly hotel chain in Oregon where I had led a rebranding campaign last year. "Samuel," he said as soon as I answered, voice steady, to the point. "I don't believe anything Midas Point is sending us anymore. The new rep they assigned feels lost. Their material reads like pre-packaged brochure fluff. Did you really leave the company?" I nodded even though he couldn't see, replying calmly, "They called it a performance-based downsizing, but you and I both know what's really going on." He let out a slow sigh, choosing his words. "We're meeting with our board. If nothing changes in the next week, Greenline will terminate the partnership." But I didn't call just to share that. I froze. "We need someone who understands clients, not spreadsheets, someone who builds, not just repairs. I'm offering you a role here. Regional Marketing Director." I leaned back in my chair, hand gripping the edge of the desk. Douglas Reamer wasn't the type to make offers over the phone. He had once rejected 2 big firm candidates simply because they didn't grasp the importance of localized guest experience. "You know about my health situation, right?" I asked, directly. "Yes. We spoke with our in-house physician and reviewed insurance options. Greenline offers top-tier health coverage for senior staff, including cancer treatment. We also support flexible work schedules, remote if necessary. You don't have to prove anything, just keep doing what you do." There was no pity in his voice. This wasn't "we're here to support you," it was "we need your skills," period. My throat tightened. After all these years of keeping everything polished, hiding exhaustion behind suits and clean presentations, this was the first time someone saw the truth without flinching. "I need 2 days to sort things out," I replied quietly. "But if the offer still stands after that, I'm in. Send a confirmation email. My team will handle the paperwork. You'll start next week, remotely for now. The project crew is ready and waiting." The call ended, but I stayed seated. The sunlight through the window seemed to sharpen every detail around me. Soon after, an official email from Greenline's HR department arrived. A provisional contract, health coverage details, and a list of creative team members I'd be working with. One name jumped out. Leah Tran, a former content strategist from the Stay Slow campaign back in 2021. I chuckled quietly. The universe, it seemed, was trying to stitch broken pieces back together in strange ways. That afternoon, Hannah came home early. When I told her about the call, the offer, she looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. Not just with relief, but with something deeper. Hope. "I always thought you deserved a place where you didn't have to hide your pain," she whispered. "They saw it before it got buried." That night, for the first time in weeks, we had dinner without talking about prescription costs or utility bills. Logan shared stories from school. Ava showed off a new art piece pinned in her class. Their faces no longer looked shadowed. The email to Midas Point's 3 investors remained scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. I had no plans to cancel. Walking away didn't mean abandoning what was wrong. Before shutting down my laptop, I added one line at the end of the message. "I've chosen to move forward, but those still inside deserve a fairer system." I closed the laptop. Sleep came easily, not from exhaustion, but because I no longer felt the weight of silence. At exactly 8 a.m., the email titled "Actual Performance of Midas Point Marketing Comparative Analysis" was delivered to 3 inboxes, the individuals holding most of the financial power in the company I had served for over a decade. I didn't attach charts to impress, no flowery language, just a data-driven report shaped by sleepless nights, laid out in a clean timeline with corroborating evidence. Every number pulled from internal systems, every client quote preserved word for word, unedited, uncropped. I wasn't expecting replies or praise. Sending, it wasn't to reclaim anything lost, but to stop the blade before it fell on someone else. I brewed coffee, just about to sit down when the phone rang. It was Leah from my soon-to-be team at Greenline. "Sam, Midas Point is in chaos," she panted. "Brett was just pulled into an emergency call with the investors, 2 hours long. Your report started spreading internally within 15 minutes. I frowned. "I didn't send it to anyone inside." "You didn't have to. One of the 3 investors forwarded it to HR for internal comparison. From there, it leaked to the department heads." I said nothing. Leah continued. "There's an email Brett wrote. It got forwarded too. He literally said, 'Marketing needs to be slashed completely. It doesn't produce direct profit.'" "Did you include any comparison data in your file?" "I attached the revenue data from the 7 largest campaigns. In total, they generated over $18 million. "I see," she exhaled sharply. "No wonder every client service team has started scheduling private calls with the investors." An hour later, Kyle called. "They just sent out a company-wide announcement. All marketing restructuring plans are temporarily suspended for a reassessment of long-term performance. Also, the investors have requested an internal hearing with participation from an independent third party." I leaned back in my chair. No one mentioned my name in the announcement. They didn't need to. Everyone who needed to know already knew. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, this is Cynthia Marks, Strategic Representative at Beacon Equity. Ms. Strauss would like a private meeting with you. Are you available tomorrow morning?" I sat up straight. "Yes." 9 a.m. via Zoom? Exactly. She wants to hear directly from the person who prepared the report. I agreed. Then spent the rest of the day reviewing potential points of confusion. What I'd sent wasn't just evidence. It was a mirror reflecting how someone like Brett could manipulate operations and erase the contributions of an entire department. At 7:40 p.m., another update appeared on the internal network, which I still had access to through a secondary account. Mr. Brett Harding is temporarily suspended from his role as COO during the ongoing internal investigation, effective immediately. No explanation, no defense. Leah texted right after, "Everything's blowing up inside. External partners are calling for emergency meetings. Landmark and Highland have officially frozen their contracts." I opened my old contact lists. Over 300 names. People I'd worked with on all kinds of projects. Some had slept in their cars after visiting 3 hotel sites in one day. Others had helped me revise campaigns from a hospital room when my hands were too shaky to move a mouse. I drafted an email titled simply, "Thank you. Even though I'm no longer there, I believe the effort you all put in is finally being seen. Keep doing the right thing, even when the system sometimes rewards the wrong. Sincerely, Sam." Right after hitting send, I stood up and looked toward the living room, where Hannah was trimming Logan's hair, while Ava lay on a pillow printed with a world map, reading quietly. The investigation would be long, the outcome uncertain. But this time, those hiding behind fabricated data weren't staying in the shadows. They had been dragged into the light by the very evidence they thought would stay buried. The Zoom meeting with Miss Lillian Strauss lasted 35 minutes, no small talk. She appeared in a gray blazer, thin-rimmed glasses, voice calm, but sharp. "We cross-checked the materials you submitted with our internal reports from the past 6 months," she said, eyes locked on the screen. "The conclusion is clear. The numbers Mr. Harding provided were selectively chosen and do not reflect the true performance of the marketing department." I remained silent. She continued. "All 3 investors have agreed to halt the merger with Althea Group. We will not move forward based on falsified grounds. An independent oversight team has been assigned to Midas Point to reevaluate the management structure and financial impact of recent decisions." Brett was officially terminated that afternoon. No press release, no farewell meeting, just one line. "Termination of employment contract with Mr. Brett Harding effective immediately." Not long after, Kyle texted. "Jamie and Mason have been reinstated. Contracts restored. Back pay approved. Everyone's overwhelmed." Another message from Leia. They scrapped the automated content model. Regional customization is back. Your name's coming up a lot, Sam. No one's saying it out loud, but everyone knows who stood up. I read the words, filled with a strange feeling. Not triumph, not relief. More like a wound finally dressed after being forced to stay open too long. The following week, I officially began my role at Greenline. Even with a flexible schedule, I actively participated in all strategic meetings. Every conversation reminded me that some places still believed in real value, where people asked, "What do you think?" instead of, "Is it optimized?" Greenline had 2 new eco-hotel projects launching in Bend and Santa Barbara. I proposed a seasonal campaign tailored to travel behavior in each state rather than a blanket rollout. Leah messaged me, "No one's ever pitched it that way before. They're surprised, but really excited." One morning, I received an email from Midas Point's board of directors. "We deeply appreciate your contributions and would like to invite you back as Director of Strategic Development, overseeing brand and partnership restructuring." I didn't need long to reply. "Thank you for the offer. However, I've found a place that fits me better, not just professionally, but personally. Wishing you success in the rebuilding process." Shortly after, Leah sent me a screenshot. Midas Point's marketing room had returned to the old project board layout. Whiteboards by region, hotel photos pinned beside markers of different colors. They were returning to the system I once led. No name was officially attached, but in every board, every viable idea column or client notes section, I saw the imprint of the original team. People who never needed applause to keep doing the right thing. The day I finished my last round of chemotherapy, Hannah, Logan, and Ava picked me up from the treatment center. She brought a hoodie with the words, "You make campaigns, we make cookies." Logan wore oversized glasses, pretending to be an investor reviewing metrics. We didn't speak much as we walked to the car. The breeze was soft, the sky neither bright nor gloomy. Ava squeezed my hand and handed me a cookie wrapped in paper, scrawled in crayon, "Marketing daddy equals best daddy." I laughed, not at the joke, but because, for the first time in months, the sound came freely without being stopped by coughing or worry. We had dinner at the same spot on Willow Street where I once sat before my first treatment. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. I didn't need to look back to see how far I'd come. No more pain, no more anger, no more fighting, to prove what never needed proving. Just quiet, and the clearest feeling. It was time to live by what I truly believed. Samuel's story proves that truth and human dignity can't be buried under manipulated data or unethical decisions. Even while undergoing cancer treatment, he chose not to stay silent. With determination and undeniable evidence, he exposed a broken system, protecting his colleagues, clients, and himself. He didn't just reclaim his name, he found a workplace where integrity and skill are genuinely valued. What do you think about Samuel's journey and the choices he made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and meaningful stories about life and family in the episodes to come.